Hello everyone and welcome to another Shadowlands video. My name is Barokoshama. Today we got some really big news coming to the PTR and soon live servers for the patch 9.0.5. There's a lot of changes coming, but these aren't the only changes, and I quickly wanted to just stress that before we get started into listing what the changes are. Obviously a lot of people are a little worried that there aren't going to be enough class tuning changes to come in the 9.0.5, but this is just the first round of changes and announcements. So stay tuned for more to be happening, but let's talk about what's going on. So Blizzard has added a new achievement system for Mythic Plus, which allows you to unlock gear upgrades for dungeon-specific items. Each interval of achievement is based off of whether you have completed all dungeons at a specific level, unlocking the upgraded items to a certain item level. This also means that Valor points are returning in Shadowlands 9.0.5, which is really, really cool. I'm glad that they're doing this system, but I have a little bit of contingencies, but we'll discuss that. So, we've seen a lot of feedback about the pros and cons of the various sources of gear in Shadowlands endgame. After a rewarding first few weeks, we know that many dungeon-focused players reached a point where their only relevant rewards from the system came from the Great Vault, instead of dungeons. While the Vault should represent a major goal and the source of the best rewards the endgame has to offer, we want to find a way for the loot from the chest at the end of the challenging Mythic Keystone run to feel relevant, without bringing back random upgrades such as Warforging, which is good. Warforging, Titan Forging. That was a nightmare. Which particularly solves this problem in the past. Sure, I guess. But I mean, also it was extremely toxic to the gearing system and how you received loot, because it just felt like it never ended. There was no end goal. So I don't particularly agree with this. We also want to provide a more consistent reward for the effort for players who do not receive an item at all at the end of the dungeon, which is the Valor points. So the framework for a system that attempts to address these goals should be presented in the first PTR update, subject to ongoing tuning and refinement, which is good. It means they're open to criticisms and changes. Gear from Mythic Keystones dungeons is now upgradable, initially with a cap of item level 200, which players can raise to item level 207 by completing all 8 Shadowlands dungeons at Mythic 5 or higher. This will reward new Keystone Explorer achievement, while the existing Keystone Conqueror achievement for all 10s or higher will increase the cap to item level 13, so heroic raid gear. And then the item level to 220 by completing the Mythic Keystone Master. So if you've already completed this in Season 1, you're already going to be able to unlock this gear. But you won't have Valor points. The Keystone Master achievement for all 15s in the time. So this is a really good time to actually get Keystone Master, as it's going to become okay for people that actually do boosts and sell keys for in-game gold and currencies. I believe that is going to become more expensive because there's more things tied behind the achievement rather than just the mount for now. So it's probably best for players to try and get the Keystone Master if they can early and before the patch hits live, because it's probably going to become more expensive if you're into buying those boosts. With a weekly cap, upgrade costs will vary by item slot and will be considered across all item levels. Consistent across item levels. Okay, so it's not going to be like honor upgrades where like it increases in costs based off of the item level that you're upgrading to. So that's really interesting. Anyway, the Valor Point system coming back. That's really, really good. I also suspect that any items that you have previously gotten in Season 1 will be able to be upgraded. I don't think that they will force players to acquire new items to be upgraded to the full item level. So if you already have like a 207 ring that has your best stats, right, and like you use that because it has your best stats on it, and you wish you kind of had it at a higher item level. Well, if you hold on to that ring, you'll likely be able to upgrade it to the full 220 item level ring at the end of the cap if you had Keystone Master by 9.0.5, so when it releases. So hold on to your gear that's lower item level. If you deleted something, you can always item restore it back. That would be relevant. So let's say you got a 207 taint changeling or something, right? And you were like, man, I gotta replace this trinket. Well, you can upgrade that 207 changeling now to 220 unbound changeling when the patch hits. So it may be worth item restoring items that you have not, or that you have deleted or gotten rid of. So keep that in mind, guys. Let's move over to the class tuning. Now, I'm just going to cover the generalized points because the formatting for everything else is a little messy. But I will leave the Wowhead article in the description down below for this. So that you guys can like pick through it yourselves if you want. So we're just going to be covering the highlight points in this section. So let's get started. So this is the first Shadowlands patch 9.0.5 PTR build. It's the first build, which includes many class and spell changes. This includes more Covenant ability tuning, conduit changes, and more. So it's mainly Covenant ability tuning and conduit changes. That's what the focus of this build was, it looks like. There are some slight changes to class abilities, but it's not surgical. Like, they're not targeting specific pain points in classes or overtly powerful points of other specs in classes, okay? So that build is subject to come. Keep in mind. So highlights. Fleshcraft now grants a much bigger shield and offers a large damage reduction during the channel. So it's now a 30% damage reduction, and it has a new passive. Moving near an enemy corpse consumes their essence to reduce Fleshcraft's cooldown by 1 second. This is really interesting, and it touches on something later on with the Necrolord Soulbind Plague Divisor. Actually, while we're talking about that, let's talk about Plague Divisor. So, Volatile Solvent, which usually, when you used Fleshcraft near a corpse, you would drain their essence and then gain a buff. But Fleshcraft's new passive effect consumes the corpse's essence, completely granting the buff. So that means you just have to walk over a corpse to grant the buff from Plague Divisor, which is good. I think that's a great change. Now Fleshcraft can be used as more of a defensive cooldown or a defensive spell. A preemptive defensive spell, since you gain 30% damage reduction while channeling it. This is also going to be a lot more powerful in PvP because of the Soulbind. The Plague Divisor itself grants a really unique Soulbind ability in the effect of Ultimate Form. Here, I'll just show you guys in-game. So, Ultimate Form, while channeling Fleshcraft, you are immune to crowd controls and you generate 2% health every 1 second. If you finish the full channel, you gain 4 seconds of crowd control immunity, during which you regenerate 2% health every 1 second. This can still be kicked or displaced, so you can get knocked back out of this channel or you can get interrupted. But this is just the cherry on top, essentially, for Fleshcraft. So if you are a Necrolord Shaman or a Warrior Necrolord or something, right, your Fleshcraft just became a lot more powerful, which is interesting. I like that. Death Knights, Death's Due, the Night Fae ability, and Shackle the Unworthy buffed. So obviously a lot of Death Knights are running either Venthyr, or after progression you'll see Death Knights move over to the Venthyr Covenant to fill up the slot for Mythic Plus. But a lot of Death Knights started out as Necrolords because of the grippy hands. It's also really good for PvP. So just Covenant balancing for Death Knights here. Fodder to the Flame got reworked, so your damaging abilities have a chance to call forth a demon from the Theater of Pain for 25 seconds. Throw Glaive deals lethal damage to the demon, which explodes on death, dealing 175% of attack power, damage to nearby enemies. It's not... And healing you for 25% of your max HP, by the way. So this is going to be really, really strong when you're in Metamorphosis and your health pool is, like, a lot higher. So the explosion deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets, but that doesn't mean that it's target capped. So it's going to deal the full damage to 5 targets and then reduce damage past 5 targets. So this, depending on the scaling of this and how well it plays into Necrolord, with also the nerf to Repeat Decree, which is a direct nerf to the power of Elysium's Decree. Jeez, this freaking music. We're just gonna... I was getting a little annoying. Okay, so with the direct nerf to Repeat Decree, which I think it was like a 10% nerf, we may see some Death Knights choose Fodder to the Flame and go Necrolord, depending on how powerful it is. And also Fell Defender got nerfed. So Druid, Adaptive Swarm for Necrolord and Endless Thirst Current Conduit Venthyr buffed. Restoration Druids, Rejuvenation also got buffed. Hunters, Death Chakram and Flayed Shot got buffed. Mages, Deathborn, Mirrors of Torment, and Radiant Spark got buffed. Obviously, pretty much all mages right now are Night Fae for reduced cooldown on all of their abilities, including Combustion, but it also does like uncapped AoE, which is also really good during Combustion because you have 100% crit rating. So like your AoE Combustion rotation includes using not Fey Transfusion, the Night Fae ability. The channel. I forget what it's called. Why can't I know what it's called right now? Anyway, I play a Fire Mage as an alt. I should know this. Anyway, tell me in the comments what the name of the ability is, because I'm losing my mind. Monks, Renewing Mist, and Vivify cost less mana. I think Mistweaver monks need a buff. Especially in PvP, because like they're so dang squishy and they die in like a stun. I understand that they got like a buff to their cooldown on Cocoon, but like that's not enough. I don't think that's enough at all. So they just need a little bit more defensive capabilities because they're so squishy and they can just die in a stun. Holy Paladins, Holy Shock costs more mana, and Vanquish's Hammer Necrolord got buffed. That makes sense. Paladins are just super strong right now, especially when it comes to mana conservation, even in PvP. Pre-Spirit Shell got nerfed. Kiss of Death and Cauterizing Shadows buffed. Fey Guardians Night Fae got buffed. I believe it's like a 30-second reduced CD on Shadow Fiend now. So we'll see what that looks like. Fey Transfusion for Night Faes. Vesper Totems for Curie and Primordial Wave for Necrolords got buffed. Just to quickly say, the damage and healing got buffed. The damage and healing got buffed, and specifically Enhancement Shamans Lightning Bolt damage got buffed, but there's a little bit of a typo, I believe. I don't think for at all that the restoration portion of Primordial Wave got buffed, but the enhancement did. So it's now 150% normal damage of your Lightning Bolts instead of the 100% for Enhancement Shaman, whereas Elemental Primordial Wave stays the same. And Lightning Shield got buffed, just its damage. Just its damage, I think. Let me scroll down just to make sure. Oh, this thing too. I wanted... People are going to look at this. They're going to look at the Earthquake and be like, is that a nerf? Is it a buff? It's literally changing 100 divided by 100 to 1, which is the same value mathematically. So they're just simplifying the tooltip and how it breaks down. So I think this is super funny because a lot of people in my Discord were like, so Earthquake changed? I don't know what that means. Is that a buff? Is it a nerf? Like, no, it's not. It's just the same. Lightning Shield. Instead of 3.6% of spell power, it's now up to 15% of spell power for the damage. So Lightning Shield's just going to hit a little bit harder, which I think is okay. I think that's fine. It's not a big deal. Side note, Earthquake's base damage without the legendary is quite low. When you compare it to things like Flame Patch, a talent from Fire Mage, Those two damaging abilities, or like, yeah, the talent and the earthquake ability itself should not be close in damage at all. I think Flame Patch needs a nerf because it's a talent, first of all, and Earthquake, either Flame Patch needs a nerf or Earthquake needs like a slight buff, because we're totally reliant right now on Echoes of the Great Sundering for our Earthquake to deal damage, and it's extremely awkward to use Earthshock in the middle of AoE. I think that Echoes of the Great Sundering also needs like a rework. Like, if you put down an Earthquake, instead of like your Earthshock empowering your next Earthquake, maybe you just have your Earthquake empower your next Earthquake. That way you don't lose on Earthquake uptime, and the knockdown effect, which is quite good for the utility of Earthquake, isn't wasted, because you're putting down half as many Earthquakes now, which means you're taking advantage of the knockdown half as much. So I think that Echoes needs a rework. I think it'd be a lot better, obviously, and we would be a lot happier as Elemental Shaman if Earthquake just empowered your next Earthquake rather than Earthshock. It'd be the same Maelstrom cost, and you wouldn't need to buff Earthquake if you made that change. Like, I think if Blizzard makes that change or thinks about it, like, you don't have to touch the values of Earthquake at all. Just give us a little bit better, because we have ground targeted AoE. It's a lot harder to play right now in the meta, and tanks just kite out of it anyway. So it's not actually going to be that much of a damage increase, Lamau. Warlocks, Malefic Raptures, nerfed, impending catastrophe. Venthyr, buffed. Warrior, Conqueror's Banner, Necrolord rework. This is funny. So brandish the Conqueror's Banner, granting 400 mastery and 30% increased movement speed to you and your 2 nearest allies, and preventing movement speed from being reduced below 100%. This is really interesting, because if you pair this with like Emini, lead by example, like the intellect or the primary stat buff, I think it's gonna be really funny if warriors have to switch to Conqueror's Banner and be like a buff bay to their Fire Mage and their Boomkin in the group. Oh, that'd be really funny. Okay, so warning, as this is the first 9.0.5 build, there are many changes, including many things like Azurite Essences that are not relevant. The uncategorized spells have been removed from this post for now, and there are over 5,000 changes, and a lot of them had data mining errors. So, because this is the first build, let's quickly disclaimer again that this is going to obviously be added onto, like, the build itself, the PTR build. There's going to be more builds. There's going to be more changes coming. So don't lose hope yet if you're looking for buffs or nerfs for certain specs. I think there's a lot of changes that are going to come in 9.0.5. A lot of it is also system changes. So interesting. There's also hot fixes. These aren't really that relevant, though. I thought I was going to cover them, but I'll leave the link in the description anyway. So the PvP talent for Life Bloom fades out, while the Dark Titan's lesson legendary effect. Manifestation of Envy no longer fixates pets, which unfortunate, because these manifestations would actually do a lot of damage to players in this room. Devos, actually this is a little bit of a good change. So resolved an issue where raw enema would sometimes spawn on the platform after the air phase ended. So this would happen when you threw a spear in a certain point of the fight. The spears that are above the angels, like in the sky. So you had to like jump off the platform, and then you would get shot up, and then you would slow fall onto a spear. You would grab the spear and throw it at the boss, and it would do like an extra 7% damage to the boss. So and then orbs would spawn randomly. It was weird. Resolved an issue where Dark Exile would fail to transport players to the lower platform. So this could be because of immunities, Mage Ice Block, or Hunter Trap. I don't really know. Yeah, I don't really know about that for sure. And Stygian Abductors will no longer attack players who are in transit between Chaotic Rift Zones. So this is a good one, because you would get bugged out, sometimes disconnected. It never happened to me, but I heard stories about it. Anyway, about all of these changes, I think they're good. Blizzard has been obviously showing their hand at trying to make the game better, with balancing as often as they can, without overly changing things, where players have put in a lot of work for themselves into a certain class. So I wanted to make this video to hopefully farm some clicks, as it's relatively new information. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like the video if you like it. Subscribe for more Shaman and Shadowlands content in the future. If you guys want to support my content, I'll be leaving the links to my Twitch page, twitch.tv/Barokoshama, where you can come and catch me live. I'll be streaming today, tomorrow, next day. And my Patreon link, where you guys can also get some pretty awesome benefits from Patreon. I'll be leaving the links to that along with my social medias down below in the description of the video. Thank you again so much for watching. Keep calm and Masterman. Bye-bye.